you guys for tuning in. It's been kind of a mad rush around here. Thank you. Awesome. I'm glad you guys have sound now. Yeah, it's been a little bit of a mad rush running around to get all this stuff set up. Plus, I have a 3.5-month-old baby who needed to eat about 5 minutes ago. So, you know, life. But we're good. We're all here. I have my tea. So, I want to start by saying hi. My name is Heather, if you haven't met me yet, and welcome to our first ever Sourdough Mamas Live. This is going to be a live video every single week, same time, same place, with different topics. So that's really exciting, and I'm really excited to actually start this for you guys and with you guys. Because the whole point of doing this is to keep us as a community and be supportive and knowledge sharing community. Like I said, bear with me for technical difficulties because they probably will still happen. Today, what we're going to talk about are sourdough sandwich loaves. So the first thing I want to do is show you 2 loaves that I made already just a little while ago. So I'll bring those over. So this one was made in my long 12-inch Pullman pan. So this is a long loaf of sourdough bread. I put poppy seeds on top just to kind of play with it. I've never done poppy seeds before. And that's what that turned out like. And this one was made in a 9-inch loaf pan. And I put oats on the top of that one. It turned out beautifully. We're going to talk about pans for a second, but I want to take 1 minute and shout out to my mom because she brought me this pan from home last time she visited me, and this was my grandmother's bread pan. So how special, I just baked in that for the very first time today. So thank you, Mom. And it made this beautiful loaf of sandwich bread. So this is awesome to just slice into and make sandwiches with, make toast with, or just have snacks. So that's what we're gonna be making, that's our goal today. First we're going to do a pre-shape. We're kind of going to get right into that. I have dough that's ready to be pre-shaped. It's kind of sitting over to the side. So we're going to pre-shape that in just 1 second. And as you know, if you've made sourdough before, or maybe you haven't, but once you pre-shape, your dough needs to rest on the counter for a little while. So we'll pre-shape it, let it rest, and then we'll kind of have a longer chat. You guys can ask questions at any time. My husband's kind of here in the background as well. He's going to kind of be looking at questions, letting me know if I'm talking too fast, things like that. We'll have a long chat, and then we'll do the final shaping, and I'll show you guys how to put it in the loaf pans themselves as well for that overnight proof. Because that's kind of the only difference between making sourdough boules and batards versus making sourdough sandwich bread. Is just the shaping and how do you put it in a pan, what do you do? So that's what we'll be doing. Also, just so you guys are aware, I'm working on a recipe for this. I don't have a recipe for it yet on leavenly.com, but it's in the works. I was still working out a few kinks and stuff, things that I wanted to perfect. I finally nailed it, so I'm going to be sharing that soon, so stay tuned. So to start, let me tuck this away, but let me know where you guys are watching from. I would love to hear where you are in the world. I saw someone's from Australia, which is awesome, from Malaysia, wow. So we're gonna be dealing with all different types of Southern California, all different types of temperatures, of humidities, different altitudes. I don't know if you guys know, but I live in Golden, Colorado, so I'm at 5,700 feet. So altitude affects my bread baking way more so than Casey, who's in South Carolina, for example. So we're gonna have very different bread, and that's totally cool. That's all what the Leavenly method is about adjusting the recipe for your kitchen. Edmonton, Alberta. I don't know if you can hear my Canadian accent, but I am Canadian. I've lived in the US for 5 years, and you'll probably hear it come out because it gives me away sometimes. I'm so excited, guys, to get started. I'm just kind of reviewing my notes to make sure I didn't miss anything, because as you can tell, I'm like really excited. So, how about we start by pre-shaping, okay? What size is your grandmother's pan, Margie said. I actually measured it yesterday. It's 9 inches by about 4.5 wide. Whereas I'm going to talk about pans in a little bit, but my Pullman pan is 4 inches wide, so you can kind of see the difference in width there. But we will discuss that in a little bit. Great question. I'm going to get my bread pre-shaped because it needs to do that and it needs to rest. So let's get that started. My wonderful husband is going to tip that camera down for me so you guys can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to grab a kitchen towel. Alright, so I'm going to just dust some flour. Let me move this pan so it's kind of not right in the way. I'm going to dust some flour on my countertop, and I'm going to be dumping my dough out right onto the countertop just right here. So we flour it so it doesn't stick. And I just got this flour shaker from, actually it was from a local restaurant supply, but you can get the same type on Amazon. It has a fine sieve sifter on the top. Let me get the flour out of it. There you go. You can see that. It's more for like icing sugar. Some people like the more bigger holes. I like it like this because it makes it nice and fine. So we just flour like that. Then I'm going to dump this right out onto the counter. So this is my regular old sourdough recipe. This is the one that I have committed to my memory, and it's on leavenly.com. The comment or the recipe is going to be in the comments below after the video is posted, so you can find that there. But this is just regular sourdough. So we're going to talk about that too, the different recipes you can make. So I'm just going to dump that out onto my counter. Just like so. I started this at about 12:45 this afternoon. So it is ready to go. Now, my recipe makes about 2,000 grams of dough. So that's about how much you see here. I like to make things simple and easy. So I'm not going to measure it, I'm not going to weigh it, but I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. I'm going to do, like I said, these two pans, the 9-inch and the 12-inch. I'm going to do 2 loaves of bread with this dough. So we will, if you had 2 9-inch pans, I would recommend doing half, because then those would fit your 9-inch pans. I'm going to do a little bit more like here, like roughly 2/3, maybe a little bit less. So this bigger one is going to be my 12-inch pan, and the smaller one is going to be my 9-inch pan. And like I said, it's just rough eyeballing it. It's going to work out perfect. It always does. Sourdough is very forgiving. That's what I always say. So I just cut that with a bench knife. Just a basic metal blade, plastic handle. I got this on Amazon, I think 4 years ago. Still using the same one. It does have measurements on it, which is helpful. And so let me put a little bit of flour on my hands, and then we're just going to pre-shape this. Pre-shaping basically means that you are giving the dough a little bit of shape, but it's not the final shape. So I'm putting my hands under the dough, like so, and then I'm going to pull out the edges without compressing the gases, and fold, fold. And you can see it's still really aerated. And then we're going to lift up from the bottom here. And then I just kind of do a flip. And that's it. I'm going to just flour my countertop again because I'm going to sit it at the end. And then I'm going to just relocate that guy right there. And then the same thing with this one. So just a little bit of flour on your hands. You can also do water on your hands if you want, or some people do oil. It's personal preference. I'm going to stretch that out as far as it'll go without ripping. Fold, fold. And over, and over. My husband just pointed out to me that somebody said they're from Nova Scotia, and that's where I am from. And then I noticed it was my friend Haley, who was my childhood friend. So hi Haley, thank you for tuning in. So this is my small loaf, this is my big loaf. Not sure if you guys can see this, but there's like a bubble in the skin. You can kind of pull that and pinch it and let the air out. Same with if you see that anywhere else along your surface. So mine looked pretty good. So I'm going to cover this and let it rest. I'm gonna put a little flour on top just so my cloth doesn't stick. Perfect. So yeah, Tamara, I see your comment. Your dough is so soft. Mine is always hard to pull and knead. That can definitely be frustrating. One thing I might try for that is maybe, I don't know how often you're doing your folds. Can we tip this up again? I'm not sure how often you're doing your folds, but maybe you could do them a little bit more often and maybe do a little bit less of a fermentation. That might help to make it a little bit softer. It's going to give it more shape and more strength as well. Also, if you're doing stretch and folds, maybe switch to a coil fold. I find the coil folds help to make it nice and soft and billowy. So that's what I like to do, and that's just from my own experience. I'm just going to quickly rinse this dough off my hands. Give me 1 second. All right, so I'm loving your questions so far, guys. Let's take a look. Shannon said, I think I'm not developing enough tension in my dough. I wonder if my stretch and folds are way too gentle or too few. So yes, it's definitely possible. If you're not feeling enough tension in it, that's actually, as an aside, that's one benefit. Can you take this up a little bit more? That's one benefit to doing the sandwich loaves, and we are going to touch on that. But if your dough is not really holding shape, or if you think it might be over fermented, it's really great to do a sandwich loaf, because you don't need to rely on the structure of the outside of your dough to hold it all in place and to give it that oven spring. That's what the pan's gonna do. So even if your dough is over fermented, you can toss it in here and bake it. This will be your structure and it'll rise beautifully and no one will ever know the difference. So that's one reason why I love this. But if you're looking for more tension for like a boule or batard, you are gonna wanna be really quite firm with your shaping. You can be a lot more firm than you think when you have your hands on the outside of the dough. Just be careful not to push down on the dough and degas it. I think that would be the key. Send in your questions now, guys, if you have any more, because we have time. This is resting. Let's see, it's 4:17, so we'll give it as much time as we can, and then we'll show you how to shape. Let's see. Wait, I learned actually the hard way that there's a little bit of a delay in the Facebook Live videos, so I'll give it a little more time. If you guys have any more questions, send those over. So let's just start talking about Leavenly. So Leavenly was really launched last year. We've been putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this website, and the goal is to let busy moms, busy women, busy people know that they can make sourdough bread at home for their families. It's not impossible. If you look at Instagram, if you're looking at Facebook, even if you Google, how to make sourdough bread, it's so overwhelming. There's so much information and misinformation and confusing information. And so I wanted to simplify it and say, hey, if I can do this at the time with 2 kids under 2 and figure out a way to make it fit into my schedule, then you can too. It's literally like, if I can do it, you can do it. So that's kind of where Leavenly came from. This year, or I should say in 2020, we also launched a paid product, the Sourdough for Busy Moms course, and that helps us keep all the rest of our products free. So that helps us keep the Sourdough Mamas Live video free. It helps us keep the blog posts free. The other thing is that I've been really working on a lot of helpful posts that people find valuable. So things like scoring. People had a lot of questions about scoring. How do I score a sourdough boule? So I did a post on that about the types of scores, and I did a video for those of you who learn better watching. I included a video in there, and I did a post on high altitude bread, which I've gotten amazing feedback from. I struggled with that so much when I first moved up to Denver from the Bay Area, and it was like 2 years of struggle, and I finally nailed it. So I'm like, why don't I share this with other people? I can't be the only one. And so many people have come to me and said, Heather, it finally works. So it's so exciting. That's one of my proudest posts, because I literally struggled through that. One other post that I'm really proud of too is the one about hydration. So hydration is a real sticking point for a lot of beginners and even intermediate bakers. understanding what hydration means, figuring out the hydration of your dough. And so I made a post all about hydration from start to finish. It's got a helpful sourdough hydration calculator in there. So you can just type in how much flour and water and leaven you're using, and it'll tell you what hydration your dough is. You can even use it for your starter if you're not sure what hydration your starter is. So those are all just some examples of the free resources I put out all the time, the free content I create for my blog for you guys, for my community. And that's basically what we've been working on with Leavenly in the last year. There will be a link to the Sourdough for Busy Moms course in the comments below too. And of course, it wouldn't be Leavenly without the Sourdough Mamas. So you guys, we started this group in May, and we've already got nearly 2,000 members, which is unbelievable. I'm so happy, so proud to be part of such a wonderful community. You guys are so supportive of each other, and you lift each other up, you ask your honest questions, you get honest answers, and I've never seen a negative answer from anybody. It's always so positive, so supportive. So keep that up, and that's really, really wonderful to see. So what even is Sourdough Mamas Live? So let's talk about that for a second too, and then I'll take a look at your questions, address some of those after that. So the reason I started Sourdough Mamas Live was so that I could kind of connect with you sourdough mamas in the group. I feel like I see you a lot on there. You see me, you see my posts, but you may not have ever seen my face, or even heard my voice, or seen my kitchen with my 15-year-old oven in the background. So this is me, it's real. Like I said, I have a 3-month-old baby, I have a 2.5-year-old son, I have a 3.5-year-old daughter. So life is crazy around here, but this is just me, and this is just real. And so, but I wanted to be able to connect with you guys and just to show you that we can simplify the process and that it doesn't need to be daunting. Okay, and so some examples of what we'll be doing is talking about scoring. Like one of the upcoming topics is scoring. One topic is talking about bannetons, like why do I need a banneton? What even is a banneton? Do I need one? What else can I use? So that'll be a topic. Things like different kinds of flours, high altitude baking, stuff like that. And again, if you guys want to participate and contribute to this, if you have any ideas for topics, send them over, and I'll take a look. I'll consider every single one I get, and because it's basically you guys are creating this content, and I just stand here and talk. I'm going to take a quick drink of my tea and then take a look at your questions. All right, let's see. Jackie says, what's the difference between leaven and starter? That's a really great question. So your starter, I'll show you. I always have mine on my stovetop, which my husband pointed out is a little dangerous in case somebody turns on the element. So I'm going to start keeping it on the counter. But this is my starter, unfed. I think I fed her last night. I feed her once a day. Her name is Goldie. Yes, you should name your starters because studies have shown that you will be more apt to take care of them, to feed them like a pet if it has a name. So this is Goldie because she was born in Golden, very original. So that's my starter. Your leaven is going to be basically like a supersized starter, and your leaven is like the middleman between your starter and your dough. So it basically is made from your starter. You're going to make your leaven from starter and flour and water. It's going to be a great big starter, basically. And you're going to use most, if not all, of that leaven in your dough. So some people will just super feed their starter and take what they need from their starter, and then they might have this left over. And that's fine too. Again, it's preference, but I don't like to do that because I have this fear of forgetting that I'm going to do that and throwing it out. Like I do with the rest of my my leaven. I just kind of scrape the rest in the garbage or put it in my discard jar, and I'm just scared that I'm going to end up doing that to my starter. So that's the difference between starter and leaven. Lisa's from Nova Scotia too. Hi, Lisa. How about clay bakers versus a Dutch oven? I actually can't speak too much about that because I don't really have much experience with clay bakers. I've heard really great things about them, and I've seen a lot of sourdough mamas posting about them. So that would be actually a great question for the group because, again, like I said, those sourdough mamas have that experience where I don't. I've baked in a cast iron lodge combo cooker and my Challenger bread pan, which is right back there. And also just on in the in the sandwich pans, the Pullman pans, and also just on a cookie sheet. So that's my experience. I've never baked in glass, and I've never baked in clay. So I'm sorry I don't have more information. I don't want to just make stuff up. Let's see. I'm going to scroll up a little bit just to see. So Carrie said, I'm basically at sea level. Do I need to adjust your recipe to my conditions? No. My simple sourdough recipe is actually made for sea level. And people at altitude could make it too, but my high altitude sourdough bread is specifically for people at altitude. And here's why real quick, without going on a huge tangent. Fermentation happens faster at elevation. And so that was a long, tedious process that I finally learned for myself. So in the high altitude sourdough recipe, I cut out a lot of the fermentation time. And that makes a world of difference for your final result. Let's see. A couple more questions. I see you guys are answering each other's questions. I love that. Thank you. Tamara, I will post the recipe in these comments below after the video is done. Let me scroll down. All right, so let me know if you guys have any more questions. Oh, how much starter do you keep? That's a great question. I actually do, for mine, I have to think about this. 250? No. 30, 60, 60. 150. Math is hard. So I take 30 grams of my starter into a new jar. I feed it 60 grams of water and 60 grams of flour. So my total amount is 150 grams, and that's how much I maintain. Next week, we're going to be talking about starter ratios, actually, and talking about microfeeds. So I don't know if you guys have heard of microfeeds, but we're going to be talking about that next week. Same time, same place. So definitely come back. And all right, let me check my notes real quick to make sure I didn't miss anything super important. Let me know if this is helpful for you guys too, if you guys are enjoying this, if you're excited to try to make a sourdough sandwich loaf at home. Give me an emoji, a thumbs up, a message. Also send me, let me know if you've done it before and what your experience has been. I'd love to hear that too. So then let's start talking about sourdough sandwich loaves, because that's why we're here. So I'm gonna grab one. So I kind of touched on this already, but why even make a sourdough sandwich loaf? I like to do it because it's convenient. So you can slice this up, you can make toast, you can make sandwiches, and it fits in a sandwich baggie. It's just much more convenient for making sandwiches on than the typical boule shape, which I love making a sourdough boule and a batard. That's my favorite. But this is high up there too, also because I have kids and they just like the shape of that bread best. As a tangent, my kids actually don't even know what Wonder Bread is. They literally were raised on sourdough. They don't know any different. So I'd like to see their face the first time they try Wonder Bread. But that's why I make sourdough sandwich loaves. Also, I think I mentioned this too, but you can over ferment your bread, throw it in a pan, and it'll bake up beautifully. So if you're worried that it's a little overproofed, just toss it in a Pullman pan or in a loaf pan, and you'll be good to go. Put this back over here. As far as sourdough recipes go, like I said, I use my simple sourdough recipe. I don't add anything else to it. It's just sourdough. And so some people actually you can look online and Google sourdough sandwich loaf recipe, and some people will add honey, they add milk, all with the purpose of kind of softening that inner crumb. which is great. I've done that too, and it comes out beautifully. It's really nice. But again, I like to keep it simple because I have kids, I have a crying baby, and I need to just be able to focus. I know my recipe like the back of my hand, so I just mix that up and I throw it in the pan and it comes out beautifully. Actually, I might even slice into those if you guys are interested in that, and I can show you what the inside looks like too. What pans to use, we talked about that. This is called a Pullman pan. So it is pretty much like straight walls up and down. It's tall and it's long. So there's two different options for this type of pan. This is by USA Pan. It's made in the USA. It's super tough and durable. I'll pop a link in the comments once the video's over to this exact pan. But I love this. Some people, you have the option to buy a lid for it too. So as it expands, it will actually be square. So that's kind of cool. If you don't like the risen shape in the middle, it'll be more square like some store-bought bread is. Again, total preference. This is a 12-inch long. You can get a 9-inch long. It's completely up to you. And this is a loaf pan. So the difference, as you can see, it's kind of sloped outwards. So you'd think this more about like a banana bread or a zucchini bread. But you can absolutely, obviously, make bread in this too. It's just not such a traditional sandwich bread shape as the Pullman gives you. But I obviously have some strong heart ties to this pan, so I'll be baking in this one a lot. If you guys have any questions about pans, let's see. Would love to see a slice. Okay, well now I have to slice it. Yeah, slice into it. Okay, I will. Is the crust and crumb different in the pan versus the bowl? Yes. So, because it's baked in the pan, this part down here is not exposed to the direct heat for very long. In the comments below, I'll give you guys temperatures and times, but just real quick, if you have a pen, you can scribble this down. Here's what I do. Okay, I do my simple sourdough recipe. I preheat the oven to 400 with a steam tray inside. And a steam tray, this is my janky version of a steam tray, okay, but it works great. It's just a cookie sheet, and I take 3 old kitchen towels and I put them across like this, kind of fill up as much of the space as possible without them hanging over the edge. And then you're just going to hold this under the kitchen faucet and soak it. Make it wet, fill the pan up about halfway with water, make sure that these are soaked through, and put this in the oven as it's preheating. So put this in, then turn it on to 400. That's going to create a ton of steam in your oven. If you're making multiple loaves or baking for a long time, my kind of janky hack, so you don't need to be super professional, just do what works. My hack is to fill up my watering can and I pour more water into the pan as it's in the oven, because then I don't have to pull it out and risk spilling water all over the place. So you heard it here first. That is the steam tray. So then, after you put that in, you're going to preheat it really, really well, like probably 30-45 minutes. You don't need to preheat as long as you do with cast iron, because again, there's steam, it's got a finite amount of water in it, so you don't want to preheat forever and ever, because you'll have to refill that pan. Then you put the loaf pan with the dough in the oven for 20 minutes with steam. And then after the 20 minutes, you're going to open the door, vent all that steam out, take out your steam tray really carefully. I just usually tip it right into the sink. Then rotate your pan in the oven, and then close the door for 30 more minutes. 30 to 35, but my oven does really well with 30 minutes. Okay, until you get an internal temperature of around 200, 205-ish, or you can just kind of look at it and know when it's done. Then I pull the bread out of the pan and bake it for 5 minutes just on the rack like this. So up until that point, this crust was really soft, and then the 5 minutes of exposure to direct heat gives it that nice crusty color and feeling. So hold that up. The crust is much different. It's thinner than a regular boule or batard, and the inside, let's just slice into it now. How about that? This one I just baked though, so I'm going to slice into the poppy seed one because it's cooler. I don't want to slice into it too soon because it'll be gummy. So let me see, let me make a little space. Maybe I gotta move my starter here. Okay, this is gonna make a great big mess because of the poppy seeds. I need some more counter space. Anyone else working in a tiny kitchen? My kitchen isn't tiny, but I just have so much stuff. All right, so let's slice into it. So I always start from the middle, and I go straight down. If you start from the end, that's fine. It's kind of preference, whatever you prefer, but I like to start in the middle because then you can push the ends together and keep it from going stale or dry on that exposed part. So let's slice right into this one. This is my brand new bread knife I got from my brother-in-law for Christmas. It's a Victorinox and it's amazing. Highly recommended. So let's see that crumb. Ta-da! So this is what mine looks like, which I think is perfect sandwich bread. It's light and it's fluffy. It's not at all dense. And cutting a slice for a sandwich, you would just kind of choose your width and slice through. And then you have a perfect slice of bread. I mean, amazing. My husband likes it super thick, like this. This would be his choice. I like mine a little thinner. And again, we don't want those great big gaping holes that like you see on social media, because your mayonnaise and your jelly is just going to fall through on your lap. So this is perfect. Love it. Let me put this aside. All right, now I may get poppy seeds in my dough now, but that's okay. We're kind of winging it. Let me check my notes real quick, guys, and then I'm going to take a look and see if you guys had any more questions. We talked about steam. Oh, so scoring. Do you score dough? What? Do you score dough in the loaf pan? I think, again, it's preference. You're probably so sick of hearing me say that. But sourdough really is about what works for you and what you like to do. So if you have dough in here, you can score it or not. I don't like to because I like that arced top of my crust. Some people score it though, and they'll score it this way, like straight slice across, just like that, right before it goes in the oven. And what that'll do is as it rises, it'll kind of give it two kind of mini ears, like this, and then with a little dip in the middle. It's a really neat shape too, something different if you like that. And if you look online, some people say scoring helps with oven spring, and other people say not scoring helps with oven spring. So, I mean, who knows? It's anyone's guess. So if you want to score it, go for it. If you like the look of it, if you get better results scoring, I'm all about playing with it, playing with your sourdough, making adjustments, and then make sure you're just taking notes so you remember what you're doing. And that is my advice on the scoring. Toppings. So you saw I did poppy seeds. I also did rolled oats on the loaf pan dough, and I really like the look of rolled oats on top. It just makes it look really appealing. It makes it look healthy, and I like that. What else you can do too is right before you put the dough in the oven, you can do an egg wash with egg white. Just get a brush or even do it with your fingers and just rub it on the top of the dough, and it gives it such a deep brown color. I wish I could show you guys that, but it's really, really nice. So if you don't want any toppings at all, I recommend doing an egg wash on the top right before you put it in the oven. And that's kind of it. Let's see what kind of questions we have while I sweep up my poppy seeds here. I made a giant mess. All right, let's see. I can almost smell it. I wish you could. It smells amazing. Casey says, how do you store the loaf bread? That's a really great question. The long loaf bread does not fit in a gallon-sized Ziploc bag, and that's how I generally store my bread. Maybe someone else has experience with a longer type of bag that's food safe, but for me, I will just... It doesn't really last long enough in my house to have to worry about that. Generally, by the time I need to put it in the bag, it's already cut down a lot, so it'll fit. But if that's a concern for you, just start slicing it from the end, or you could slice it in the middle like I did and put it in 2 separate bags. If you do that though, make sure, let me show you. If you put this in a bag, and this is the loaf you eat, the half you eat second, put it in the Ziploc bag and just store it like this, against your counter or on top of the fridge or wherever you store it, just to keep that seal against that piece so that it'll stay nice and moist. So that was a great question. When do you add toppings? That's also a great question. You do it, actually, I'll show you. After we do the final shaping, we're going to add some toppings. I'll show you with one, I won't add toppings, and the other I'll put some rolled oats on. So it's after you put it in the loaf pan is when you add your toppings. Let's see. Anyone use a bread box for storage? That's a great question, Margie. I'd like to know that too, because my birthday's coming up. I always ask for bread things for my birthday. If I wanted to make a cinnamon swirl, Tamara says, how do you do that? Or if I wanted to add peppers and cheese shreds. So that's actually a great question. I'd say the cinnamon swirl, I should think about this. The cinnamon swirl would do best to add now. So after the pre-shape, before the final shape, because you're gonna wanna maintain that swirl. If you do it any earlier, like before the pre-shape, then it's gonna get all like mixed in, which is fine. But if you want the actual swirl, I would do it for the final shaping. That's a great idea. I think I might do that kind of bread next time. And then for the peppers and cheese shreds, I would do that before the pre-shape. So you could, when I stretch the dough out, do you remember? Lay it down, put your toppings on it, and then fold, and then stretch it out top and bottom, put your toppings on, and then fold, and then that's pre-shaped, and then you'll do your final shaping and your inclusions are already in there. So that's my suggestion for that. Maybe a couple more questions and then we'll get to shaping. Thanks for all your questions too, guys. I'm loving this. This is a lot of fun. Do you ever use an electric knife for cutting? I don't, only because I don't have one. But if I did, I probably would. All right, and I'm gonna check out some more questions after. Definitely just send them as you think of them though, and we're gonna get started on the final shaping. So let me see. All right, so we're gonna grab our pans and we're gonna oil them lightly. So here's how I do that. Poppy seeds everywhere in this kitchen, even in the pans. I just put a little bit in each pan like this. And then I just use my hands because I like to keep it simple. Just kind of rub it all around, lightly oiled. If you feel like you might have used too much olive oil, just grab a paper towel and wipe out the excess. So just make sure all those surfaces are covered. Like that, nice and shiny. And then same with this one. Some people use parchment, and you're gonna hate me, but it's a matter of preference. If you like to use parchment paper, great. If you like to oil your pans, great. With the USA pan, I actually don't think you even need to oil it. I think it would be totally fine without. But I am just kind of a creature of habit, and that would make me a little bit nervous not to grease my pans. So that is greased. I'll put those aside. A Pyrex bread pan, Dan asked. I don't know. I've heard horror stories about Pyrex. About it being, cold dough going into the Pyrex and then it going in a hot oven and it's shattering. But some people absolutely swear by their Pyrex pans. So I would go for it, but just be really careful with any temperature fluctuations. If that's what you have, then great. I always say use what you got. Clearly, I use a watering can in my baking sheet, so nothing fancy. That was a great question. Yeah, as long as it's rated for 500 degrees. You have to make sure of that, because even some enamel bakeware is not rated for that high, and people bake in it and it blows up in their ovens. So I'm just kind of moving these poppy seeds aside. You can kind of see my mess down here, but that's all right. All right, so let's do the big one first, because he's close. All right, so it's nice and soft and billowy. I'm going to grab my bench knife. Bring it over a little closer. I'm just going to flip it over so that the floury side's on the top, and I'm just going to brush off all that excess flour. Bring over my large pan and just have it ready. And then, what we're going to be doing, I'll walk you through it first before I do it, is basically rolling this up kind of like a beach towel. Actually, I roll down, but you get the idea. So do not push down on your bread, because that'll degas it. But the nice thing with your pan is that you can actually push down on it a little bit more than you normally would. So don't be afraid to really give it a good shape. So let's start by getting underneath it. We're going to pull out and kind of make it into a rectangular shape, being very careful not to tear our dough or degas it. So just like this. Then we're going to fold these sides over like this. And again, brushing off excess flour as we go. I see a little bubble, so I'm going to pop that. Fold this one over like so. Then you can gently, 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 with the palm of your hand, kind of seal this seam. And I see some more bubbles. Go ahead and pop those as you see them. That just prevents any kind of great big tunnels from happening in your dough, and also great big bubbles. There's a great big one right here. Then what we're going to do is pull the top down over, and you're going to hear bubbles popping as you do this, and that's okay. So I'm tucking my thumbs. I'm going to put a little more flour on my thumbs actually. I'm pulling it up, tucking my thumbs under, and rolling it over my thumbs. And then the same thing. Pull, roll, pull, roll, pull, roll. And it's kind of gripping underneath to the bench, which is really helpful. You don't want a ton of flour underneath it at this point. Pull and roll. Pull and roll. And one last one right over. And finish it off and lay it on its seam. So I see a ton of bubbles on the surface now. We're going to pop those. And the shape is a little irregular. We're going to fix that once it gets in the pan. So I'm going to kind of let that rest there just for a minute. And then I'm going to show you the exact same thing actually with the smaller one to give this a chance to kind of rest. So let's get our bench scraper. Brush this off. So same thing, we're going to pull up and down and out, make it kind of rectangular as much as we can. And then side to side. Roll that seam down. And then you're going to put your thumbs in again at the top like this and roll over. Push your thumbs in, roll over. Push your thumbs in, roll over. And in my thumbs I can feel these gas bubbles popping, and that's completely okay. I'm not being rough, but it's just the nature of the shaping. Right over, just like the last one, and then all the way. Oh, Margie says, nice butcher block table for the bread handling. Thank you, Margie. I love this butcher block, and there's a funny story behind this butcher block. When we rented our apartment, or our house in the Bay Area, which was exorbitantly expensive, by the way, my landlord left a couple pieces of furniture and he said we could have it. And this was one of them. And when we went to move out, he actually asked for it back, and I said no, because I loved it so much. It was in the center of our kitchen there. It's in the center of my kitchen here. It's the best. One of these days it's going to have to get sanded down. but I absolutely love this thing. Apparently it was from IKEA, so if anyone's interested in taking a look, but I mean, this is years ago now. But yeah, I thought I would share that story because this was not my butcher block, but it is now. So what I'm doing, if you can kind of see, it's kind of tapered here and a bit bigger on this side. So I'm just going to kind of give this a pull, a little bit of a tug to encourage it to come this way. Then I'm going to scoop it up in my hands, seam side down. Oh, I missed a step, sorry. Pinch the ends so that the seam gets closed off. Forgot to do that part because that'll keep it from separating, and also it'll just look nicer in the pan. So just pinch those like that. Alright, I'm going to pick this up. Give it a gentle little tug before you put it in. I kind of let gravity help. Give it some jiggles. And then throw it down. Alright, so that's what it looks like when you first put it in, right? I mean, it barely even fills it. So here's what you're going to do. Don't be scared to do this. Flour your hand a little bit just by rubbing it on the counter, just like that, so it doesn't stick. And push down gently. It's kind of hard. Sweetie, can you pick up the camera and do it like directly over? Because I need both hands, but I want to show this. Yeah, if you can. So you're going to push down and kind of push the dough to the top, and then with your other hand, push the dough to the other end. You see how it's filling it in? And it will spring back, and that's okay. Just kind of hold your hand there to help it fill that pan. And you'll hear gas bubbles blowing up. That's okay. Just like that. So it doesn't have to be totally full, and like I said, you're working with gluten, and I just shaped this dough so it's not being very compliant. If you wanted to, you could let it rest for a little while, but I don't bother. I just kind of push it to the ends. As long as it kind of touches once, then I'm happy. There's a little bubble there. And a bubble there. Alright, so that's what my large loaf looks like. Alright, you can put that back down, thank you. My helpful cameraman. Do the same thing in our loaf pan, exact same. Oh, missed that step again. Pinch the ends, the swirly parts. And so, I'm sorry, I completely forget who asked that question, but the cinnamon swirl, when you pull the ends out and then you fold them in, and then right before you're rolling down, you're going to put your cinnamon stuff and cinnamon sugar on there. Then as you roll it down into a jelly roll, it's going to make that swirl. So that's how you would do that step. I meant to mention that at the time and I totally forgot, so I'm sorry. Alright, perfect. He's getting a little sticky, so I'm going to use my bench knife. Pick him up. Give him a little jiggle and down. Now this guy's not as hard to fill because it's not as long of a pan, so we could just do that gentle push, great big bubble here. So that is the gist of it. It's really that easy. You're doing a basic sourdough recipe and then you're just you're rolling it up like a beach towel and throwing it in a pan. It's really, really simple. So those are your two loaves ready to go. So I think with this one, I'll show you just real quick. All I do is, oh, I should have had this ready, and I'm sorry I don't. Maybe what I'll do, okay, I'm not going to do a topping because I forgot to get an egg wash ready. But what I would do is crack an egg in a bowl, an egg white, wash this with the egg white, put the oats on top, and then I would put that in the fridge overnight to proof with the toppings on. But the fact that I didn't, I'm not going to put toppings on, when I bake these in the morning, I'll do an egg wash right before I put them in, and they're going to be a nice deep brown color. And I'll even share those posts with you guys, the photos of these final results. So that is that. Why do you let your dough rest? Irene, do you mean the pre-shape, why I let it rest for the 30 minutes after the pre-shape? Or why we let it rest in the fridge overnight? Not sure what you mean by that. I'm going to take a look at some comments here. What pans are you using? So this one is the Pullman pan. Like I said, the 12 by 4 by 4. I will include a link to that so you guys can see exactly which one I use. There's also a 9 by 4 by 4, so it'll be as long as this pan. You can see it's quite a bit shorter. There's an option for that shorter one too if you don't want a gigantic loaf. And this is just a basic loaf pan. My mommy said you throw the dish towel over your shoulder like your mother and many mothers before that. I didn't even notice I had done that, but I do. Guilty! That is a learned trait, I think. Alright, let's see. Margie said, my mom always kept the foil and paper from butter in the fridge and then used them to grease pans with. Oh, that's really smart! I just threw one of those foil wrappers out today. I'm gonna start doing that. Thank you for that. So let's see. So Irene wants to know why we let it rest after the pre-shape. That is just part of any sourdough recipe. When you dump the dough out and you do the pre-shape, anytime you're working with gluten, it needs a chance to relax. Let me take this up again a little bit. So letting it do its 30-minute rest. Not me. After sorry. Letting it do a rest after the pre-shape lets the gluten strands relax. Because if you try to do that, the final shaping right after the pre-shape, your dough is going to be really tough and the gluten's going to be hard to work with. If you give it that time to relax and just rest and kind of come back in alignment, then when you come to do your final shaping, it'll be soft and easy and billowy to work with. It'll be like a dream, as opposed to just fighting with it and your dough's going to be tearing. And you need to respect the gluten with any sourdough recipe, any bread recipe for that matter, and let it rest. That's a great question. How many hours in the fridge before baking? So what time is it now? It's 5 o'clock p.m. my time. So I'll put these in the oven here whenever we wrap up, probably between now and 5:30, and I'll bake them in the morning. So that'll be about 15 hours. Typically I do like 15 to 18 hours. You could do 24 hours. You can basically do whatever works for you. I like to do it in the fridge because it works better for my schedule. I talk a lot about that in the Sourdough for Busy Moms course, making sourdough fit into your life. So at this point, if you were to proof it at room temperature, it would need several hours at room temperature, and then you would be baking, and that's just a lot of time in the kitchen for me with 3 young kids. And so I throw it in the fridge, it cold proofs, plus the flavors develop a lot deeper, you get a more complex sour profile. You can even leave it in the fridge longer than that if you want a really sour bread. And yeah, so that's how long I let mine go in for. Oh, real quick too, I want to show you guys, I forgot to grab these. But I got these little guys on Amazon and they're the best. I always thought they were lazy, but they're really great. They're basically like shower caps. If you can get a shower cap, that would be better, but I can't seem to find any. So I got these from Amazon and they're like stretchy plastic wrap. And so I just cover my pans with these. They're circular, so I just kind of tuck it in so it stays taut on the top. And just like that, I'll cover them. And that just protects it from getting a skin on the top of the dough while it's in the fridge. Because if you get a thick skin on top of your dough, the oven spring will not be able, well, you won't get as much oven spring as you would if you didn't have that thick crust on the top. So that is done. Those are done. Could you see that? I hope you could see that. I just realized it wasn't even there. Here's what it looks like. I'm so bad at this, you guys. I'll figure it out, I promise. This is my Pullman pan with the saran wrap on top. And Shannon said I use bamboo-based reusable paper towels. There you go. That's awesome. That's a really helpful suggestion because plastic, if we can keep it out of the landfills as much as we can, that's all the better. So let's see, a couple more comments, a couple more questions if you guys have any more. When cleaning up, how do you avoid dough sticking to the washing up brush? I don't know, Tim. I have no idea. Anyone else? Because I still have a problem with that. I read on a different group that if you get one of these sponges, it's like a silicone sponge with the really bendy fingers on it. This works really well for scrubbing out a bowl. I still have a hard time with it. It's better than using something like this. I'll give you that much. So this is way better. I just got like a 3-pack on Amazon of these. It still does stick to it though, and it's still a nightmare. So I don't really think there's an easy answer for that. Yeah, Jennifer said to wash it right away for sure. But if you're wiping out your bowl with whatever you use, your dough, the remaining dough is going to stick to whatever you're using. Maybe use your fingers at first to get the big clumps out, and then use something like this. I find it sticks to this, but then I kind of submerge it in my sink full of water and they come off eventually, but I'm still standing there picking them out. Like, I haven't found the magic answer yet, so if anybody else has, I would love to hear it. That's a great question, and that's something I actually considered writing a post about. Sourdough cleanup. Let's see. Shannon, that's what the paper towels are for. Sue says she uses a Scrub Daddy. Works great. I've seen those at Target. They're like the smiley face sponges, right? They're really hard ones, and then if you run it under warm water, they get softer. I'll have to try one of those. Lisa says, I add a little flour to the bowl and rub it around and it comes off really easily. I've never tried that. I'm going to try that after we are done here and let you know what I think. Great questions, you guys. So this is awesome. I love also that you guys are answering each other's questions. Oh, real quick, I just saw a question from Margie. She said, my sourdough never rises in the refrigerator. So should I let it rise at room temperature and then put it in the fridge? So I think if you are a tried and true bread baker with yeasted breads, it's really hard to not want your sourdough to rise. It's hard to get out of that mindset of bread rising. But sourdough, just by nature, doesn't rise a lot, and that's good because we want to save that leavening action for the oven. If we let it rise, or like if it doubles, then all of your leavening action is gone and it's not going to get much oven spring in the oven. So that's something we have to kind of get away from when we're thinking about sourdough, the rise. It's more about kind of, I don't know, trusting the process, I guess, if you can put it that way. You put it in the pans and you put it in the fridge and you just trust that it's going to ferment overnight. And it does. And when you pull it out, it will be a little bigger. It's not going to be huge. It's not going to be expanded. You may not even notice a difference. But when you bake it, you'll still have some of that leavening action left from your starter, from your leaven, and it's going to get a good oven spring. So I think just try to get away from that thought of like your dough rising as such, because I know it's tricky. It's hard to get away from that concept. Any other questions? Leave them in a comment below once this video is posted. You can also ask the group. As you can see, everyone is super helpful. There's a lot of things that I don't know. I mean, I'm a mom who likes to make sourdough bread, and I'm not an expert. I just have a lot of experience figuring things out as I go, and so I'm here to share that knowledge with you guys. But there's things that I don't know, and the group will have the answers. So if you have questions, ask the group, post in there. Also share your experiences, share your photos, share your failures. I'm actually about to share one. I might share it either tonight or tomorrow. But when I was baking my, making this dough, no, the dough before this, I forgot to reserve my 50 grams of water. I put all of my water in my dough. And then I added my salt and I went, shoot! So I had to add 25 more grams. And I've been doing this for years, okay? Like, we mess up all the time. So I'm going to share that with people, so just to keep it kind of real. So you guys can do that too. Gonna wrap up. Thank you guys for tuning in. There were 40 to 50 of you here live, which is amazing. So thank you for being here and kicking off the Sourdough Mamas Live with a bang. Thank you for answering all of the questions. Thank you for asking me questions. And I really want to see your guys' results too. So let me know. Post your results with your sourdough sandwich loaves on the group. I want to see what you come up with. I want to see the inside of yours too. You saw the inside of mine. It's only fair. And yeah, we'll be here same time next week, same place next week. We'll be talking about starter feeding ratios and how to do micro feeds. And don't forget, there's a few links down below in the comments as well. So check those out. I'm a hand talker. I need to work on that. Maybe I'll tie my hands together. I hope you guys had a wonderful time. I did. This was a lot of fun. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys.